It's been a really interesting week in real estate here in my market area. I'm going to tell you an interesting story. I just had a conversation with a colleague, a lovely, really talented real estate professional, and she had a situation where a property was listed. She got them a significant number of offers, and there were offers there that the house was simply unappraisable to. Like there were offers there that were really amazing. And she took it to the sellers, and the sellers were like, oh, we don't know that we would take this. And they proceeded to give a very just like not feasible number, a number that was, like I said, just completely unappraisable in that market area and really hadn't been seen. Like it was just a number that they sort of pulled from the sky and said, well, this is what we want. And it was very interesting to me because I think there's a lot of folks who believe that this is the seller's market, and so the sellers can do whatever they want. And the sellers may or may not believe that, which in this case, I think they do. The question is, how does this affect the whole process within a market, right? Because there are very specific behavior patterns for how a market like mine works, which I kind of want to talk to you about today. All right. My name is Nancy. I am a realtor here in northern New Jersey from Nancy Chu Homes, and I am, oh gosh, going into year 20. Been doing this business for 20 years, and in my lifetime, I have sold over $500 million in real estate. The reason why I wanted to talk to you about this is because this kind of matches with another conversation that I had with a potential seller. And this other particular seller, number two, said to me before, oh, I don't think I can sell my house. And I said, oh, why not? Because she really wants to move. She's got family in other places, and she's really kind of alone here at this point, and she would like to make the move. And she's like, well, my house is just completely unaffordable. And I was kind of like, well, what is your definition of completely unaffordable? And she was like, well, I just feel like the young people around me couldn't possibly afford my house. And I had to say, well, we're in New Jersey, and New Jersey gets a significant number of buyers and significant number of very flush buyers because of our direct pipeline from New York City, Jersey City, Hoboken, and of course, Philadelphia. Don't forget, Jersey is ultimately a suburban state that has three major metros pushing into it. And so I said, it'll be okay. Someone will be able to afford your house, unless, of course, you're telling me that you want a number that's unappraisable. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about the question of when a seller wants their property sold for a number that is unappraisable. Okay. I had a home in Montclair, New Jersey. The house itself was really, really cute, but unfortunately, it didn't have the square footage to sort of accommodate the number that I thought that buyers were willing to pay for this particular property. There were a handful of things that were extremely just so delectable about this house, but had no sort of appraisal value. And let me tell you a little bit about this, which is the house was itself extraordinarily attractive. It was 2 blocks away from the New York City train station in Montclair, New Jersey. That, by the way, is something that a buyer is willing to pay for, but an appraiser isn't really willing to give you, any sort of extra value for proximity to New York City train. It was on a double lot, and yes, you definitely, would get some sort of value from an appraiser for a double lot, but probably not as much as a buyer was willing to pay for it. Okay, it had it was a farmhouse, Victorian, so it had this sort of cuteness factor, but it also had this gorgeous wraparound porch around the front, and I'm going to tell you right now, that wraparound porch has the same exact value as a little enclosed front porch does on a much smaller home, by the way. The appraiser isn't necessarily going to give a greater value for a gorgeous wraparound porch than a little one up front. So once again, something that a buyer might be willing to pay for more, but that you're not going to get, sort of appraisable mortgage value, which added to the total price of your home in the end. Here's my favorite one. You walk in and you're like, oh, this is cute. And then all of a sudden you hit the back of the house, and the back of the house has this like unbelievable cathedral ceiling extension, once again, it actually took your breath away when you walked in. You were just like, oh my gosh, really? And that house, I look at that house and I'm thinking, wow, fantastic, phenomenal space. Once again, the buyer is attracted to this amazing high, tall ceiling. Guess what? No appraiser is necessarily going to give you any more value for the cathedral ceiling than any other ceiling. So there were 4 factors that pushed on this house to make this house more valuable in a buyer's eyes than a mortgage company appraisal was willing to give it. So in this particular case, because I knew, when I calculated, I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is not going to appraise past 1.35. Every person that came in to look at this home, I said to every single one of them, listen, if you're going to make us an offer over 1.3, I need appraisal gap coverage, which basically means that I want to know that if you're going to offer me more than 1.3, you understand that I need to see that you've got cash coverage between 1.3 and the number that you're offering, because I'm telling you now, I cannot guarantee you this house is going to appraise for the number that you want. I've got 135. So we sort of, was kind of in my head what I thought it was limited to. So I kind of, use 1.3 as the number. And I will tell you that every single person that came in, and for that particular house, I think we ended up with about 12 offers. I think it was 14 in the end, but 12, sort of initial offers. And I will tell you that every single person that came in over 1.3 offered me gap coverage to the number that they were offering. We ended up selling that house for about 1.45. And I will be the first to tell you that no, it did not appraise. It did not appraise as expected. I just didn't have the square footage compared to some of the other houses. It was just a little bit on the smaller side. It was like 2,200 square feet, just a little bit on the itty bitty side. And yes, I think it appraised to almost 1.4. But the buyers who were buying the house had offered us 1.45. So they dutifully went to the bank and got their $50,000 to cover the gap coverage. And no one was salty about it. No one was salty about it because we already knew. When we were looking at the property, we already knew, right? So everybody was prepared. This was not a shock or a surprise, right? This is, by the way, a smart way of doing this so that no one is shocked or surprised. And as a listing agent, this is a talent that you should discover. If you don't know how to do this, then I don't know why you're in real estate. But so I think that's very important. So that being aside, it is an interesting challenge because what you do see are sellers at this point wanting more money, and the affordability question in their heads when they say well, I don't know that this buyer can afford my house. It's because you are seeing properties in low inventory markets push into places where the market, where you're pushing into unappraisable territory here. So it does become a question for sellers whether or not the particular buyer is capable of affording the property and not trying to do something like, listen, anybody can walk in and be like, I'm going to give you $5 million for your house. But then you let the appraisal try to bring that value down and then you try to renegotiate. I'm going to tell you right now, buyers, that doesn't work because, I guess it could work depending on where you are, but the sellers where I am, they're not falling for that. They want to see that the number that you're providing them is actually something you can do with cash coverage, because otherwise, they're not going to sell it to you. They're going to sell it to the person that can. Anyway, so that's kind of the challenge of the balance between affordability right now for sellers. Sellers want to know that the buyers can actually afford it and have cash coverage difference if they need to. And buyers need to understand that, I've had buyers say to me, well, I would never do that. To which I was kind of like, well, then you can't fight for a house around here. You can't fight for a house. If every house in January is getting anywhere from, you guys, in my market area, in January, that we've even had houses have as many as 30 plus, 80 plus offers already. And it is January 2026, February 2026, guys. This is an indication that this market is going to be, it's going to be a tough one because of our inventory challenges. It's not because our market's so awesome. It's not because our houses are amazing. It's because everyone wants to be here due to proximity from New York. And I don't have anything to sell because sellers simply are locked in, and we already know, yada, yada. I'm not going to go over that story again. So please understand that if you are a seller and you are asking for an unappraisable number, a buyer might not give it to you. But at the same time, if you have features that a buyer is truly, truly attracted to, then yes, you might get a number that is out of the appraisable capability, right? but it's going to be within reason out of appraisable capability. You can't have a, $1 million house that you want $5 million for. No one's going to give that to you. Buyers are not stupid, right? So that's going to be warning number one. Warning number two on the buying side is, sellers are actually very capable right now of getting over appraisal numbers for their houses. And if you want to fight for that pitch perfect house, you're going to have to participate in that. The market will not make an exception for you because you're an awesome person. No, unfortunately, you're going to have to fight for that, which means you're going to have to use these terms. You're going to have to possibly fight past the appraisable limit of a given home, if that's the one you want. I'm going to tell you now, if that is not something you want to participate in, then find a house that has been sitting. Find a house that maybe needs a little bit of work, that is going to have less competition, that you can walk in and make an offer and have more leverage. Because if it's going into 10, 15, 20 multiple offers, you will have no leverage. So then let's change the way you do things. Let's go find you something that you can actually have more leverage for. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. I'm so sorry. I understand this may have been less cohesive than some of my other posts, but it's just been a really interesting kind of thing, seeing where the sellers are standing, where the buyers are standing, and kind of, understanding that, getting a property from one person to another is going to be about a meeting of the minds. And there's two very different mindsets right now. So that's a lot of fun. And it's something that we're working through in our low inventory market here in Northern New Jersey. All right, listen, guys, if you find our videos useful, please do like, subscribe, and comment. It totally helps us. And, and for anyone who has any real estate questions or would like to reach out, you can always reach me directly at Nancy at Nancy Chu Homes, NANCY at NANCYCHUHOMES.com. All right, guys, I will see you guys next week.